What's something that pissed you off as a kid and still pisses you off now? Every time a grumpy old adult demanded you to explain yourself and then cut you off to tell you they weren't interested in listening to your excuses as you tried to explain yourself. Greater than every time a grumpy old adult demanded you to explain yourself and then stop right there, kiddo. Being told to do something I was already going to do. Being told to do something while I am literally doing it. Stupid rules enforced by stupid people. Collective punishment, especially in school. That is how you get students to hate you. I heard that's even a war crime under the Geneva Convention. When my uncle telling me to find God because he thinks my job is sinful. I'm a college student working at a restaurant. On a scale from Chuck E. Cheese's to topless titty sushi bar, how simple is your job? Fox's Pizza Den. He says foxes are evil and a sign of the devil. Amazing. People saying you're too young to feel depressed and horrible anxiety. I see it way too much today. Especially coming from someone who went through it as a kid and teenager. Do people really gatekeep depression? That's depressing. Yep, it really happens. Coming from a 15-year-old dude that has depression and has had 2 previous suicide attempts, I can say it really is an issue. When my teachers were told about, half of them basically avoided me or pretended I didn't exist, and I asked one what I had done wrong and she basically said that I was wrong. Too young to feel like that. Seeking attention and then the classic BS, just wait till you get older because it gets so much worse. Littering, just hold on to your shit for 5 minutes then bin it at home, it's not hard. Okay, this will take some explaining. You know that thing in movies or television shows where someone will walk in on someone else seemingly doing something wrong, but the audience knows it's just a misunderstanding? I hate that there's never a moment later on where the misunderstanding is cleared up. This happens all the time in romantic comedies, for example, but they're in all kinds of things, from kids shows to adult shows. Like the main girl in a rom-com will come home early to surprise the main guy and she'll catch him with his ex-girlfriend or something. We as an audience know that he was just telling her off or something like that. But it always looks like something's fishy. I'm totally fine with that happening. But there's never any scene in which that misunderstanding is corrected. One of the worst tropes in all of fiction, regardless of Mesdames Monsieur. People chewing loudly and or scraping their silverware on their teeth. Mom demands an explanation for something. Me starts explaining. Mom cuts me off, asterisk asterisk, well? Asterisk asterisk, like, bitch, let me fucking finish. I hate being interrupted by people to this day. I've pissed her off several times since then by telling her don't interrupt me when she cuts me off. I'm trying to stop doing it too. But at least I apologize when I realize I'm doing it and tell the other person to go on. My mom will call me out when I do it. That's so rude. I was asterisk asterisk talking asterisk asterisk. But when she does it to me and I call her out, it's, well, you just ran on and I can't get a word into the conversation, so I asterisk have asterisk to interrupt. Quote, when people say, I could care less, when what they really mean is that they couldn't, as in could not, care less, makes no sense. There is this artist who inspires me a lot since I was young, though back then she was very underrated. I've always told my friends to check her out and such, but they never really bothered to. But after a few projects of her became popular, suddenly all of my friends are like, oh hey, you should check this artist out. She's amazing. Or, you need to know who she is. She's a very talented artist. And other shit like that. I mean, I'm happy that she got the attention she deserved, but this shit really pisses me off. It always feels good to be an UGG fan though. When someone who is relatively unknown finally makes it big, it's satisfying to realize that you were an early adopter who may have somewhat contributed to their success. In second grade, one taught a kid I thought was a friend the word shit with the agreement that if I taught him a dirty word that he wouldn't use it in front of anyone that would get me in trouble. Or say I taught it to hi monsieur, what does the shit do? He writes it on artwork that he has to turn in. The teacher starts grilling him on where he learned it and he rats me out. I explained that knowing a word is no crime and it was information traded under the agreement that he wouldn't use it. I even claimed that if I sold a gun to somebody and they committed murder that I wouldn't be liable for harming the monsieur. I am not joking. That was my argument. She disagreed and had me swap my green kangaroo for a yellow one on the behavior chart. There is a bright side to this story, since we had a substitute the next day and I was able to write the injustice. Since I almost never swap my kangaroo color, no one called me out on it. I did get asked later by a classmate and I said that what they remember happened the week before. Greater than I explained that knowing a word is no crime and it was information traded under the agreement that he wouldn't use it. I even claimed that if I sold a gun to somebody and they committed murder that I wouldn't be liable for harming the monsieur. I am not joking. That was my argument. What the fuck were you reading or watching in second grade? Or were your parents lawyers or something? My parents aren't lawyers and I honestly forget. The only books I specifically remember reading at the time were Moby Dick and one about a princess and a dragon becoming friends whose name I forget. One time they were showing the Tiny Toons movie broken up into parts during the Tiny Toon show. It was supposed to be one part every day. Day 1 and 2 were parts 1 and 2. Day 3 was some random episode. Days 4 and 5 were parts 4 and 5. Pissed me off then and pisses me off now. Did you never see part 3? That a vending machine can take my money and not deliver the IT, monsieur. The fact that we had to ask to go to the bathroom and were sometimes told no. Just this. Being told no, you can't use the restroom at school was incredibly stupid. Like, okay, I'll just piss or shit on the floor then, Deborah. Hugging people, especially relatives. I just don't want to be touched. You were a supporter of social distancing before it was cool. A true visionary ahead of your time. When people in my family leave out the fucking block of cheese on the counter, UNWRAPED, not only does it get soft, it fucking dries up so it has to have then ends cut off. Like what the fuck? I've never possessed blocks of cheese, but I do know what dried cheese tastes like. Fuck that. That cheese deserves better. That hot dogs and hot dog buns don't sink the number quantity in their packages. Kid me always hated those last 2 dogs that my mom served on slices of bread. We cut them up and put them in mac and cheese. The fact that you can't play YouTube videos in the background on your phone. You can if you pay for YouTube Premium, monsieur. Also, no adverts. You can if you are on a desktop laptop. School teachers. If somebody is talking to me during class, it's not my mistake. It's only theirs. But no, we both have to go stand out of class. I am in college now and it still persists. It's even worse when someone's asking for a pencil and you get called out. The condescending tone of an adult talking to a kid. It's like, kids are people and deserve respect. 2. My teacher almost giving me a referral for not adhering to proper gender roles. Gag. One time I got a referral for literally being stabbed by a pencil in like 7th grade. Like, WTF lady, I'm the victim here. That's fucked up and shouldn't be allowed. I'm trans, but I grew up as a very feminine little boy and my parents would have raised hell if that had happened to me. Authority hierarchies demanding obedience and unearned respect and trust. How dare you question me? Quote, yeah, stay away from the military. When I see 26-year-old guys talking to a 34-year-old like a kid simply cause of rank, I know there's a problem. When you are damned when you do, damned when you don't, and the points don't matter. Anti-vaxxers. Wiping a bunch but there's still poo? Word. The fact that sugar isn't a fruit. Ever had fruit snacks? Nut chessy puffs. My dad doesn't believe YouTubers or writers can have successful jobs, as in decent money, without what he calls a proper job, like fast food or some bullshit like that. Meanwhile, There are people who have quit perfectly normal jobs, like teaching, to become a full-time YouTuber and are living just fine, being mean to animals. Zero tolerance rules, the scourge of the fucking earth. Someone comes up and hits you. You've done nothing wrong, yet you're equally reprimanded because you were involved. By that logic, in a school shooting, the victims should get expelled too. People asking, "What's your star sign?" Then they say, "Oh, that explains a lot. Now I just like about it," and they still say that. People judging me based on my age. Growing up, I was a very mature kid, so I didn't really get along with kids my age. Instead, I found it easier to speak with adults. However, I still remember the day my mother asked me to stop speaking with her friends because it freaked them out. How a child knew all these big words and could understand it when they talked about serious topics. To this day, I still get extremely annoyed when people won't take me seriously because I am too young, or wouldn't understand because of my age. Like, "Shut up, Karen." When I was 6, I was reading The Golden Compass as my bedtime story. Your 12-year-old son can't even recite the alphabet without missing a word or two. All in all, being labeled gifted is cool and all, but when people still want to take you seriously because you're younger than them, it gets extremely annoying. The fact that when I came home from the mental hospital for a suicide attempt at 14, my parents grounded me for being in the hospital. Their exact words were, "We're grounding you for putting us through that pain." All I could think in that moment is, "And you wonder why I'm suicidal in the first place." And before the hospital, when I was self-harming, when they found out, they took my horse riding lessons away as a punishment. That's awful and abusive parenting, and I recognize it intimately. Sorry you had to deal with that. I hope things are better now. Oh my god, yes. I was grounded, but the reason they gave was freedom makes you suicidal. Apparently my mom heard that people killed themselves after being on the internet or outside or talking to their friends or playing games, etc., etc., so therefore it all got banned. People purposefully spelling things wrong because they think it's cute. It's absolutely not. It's annoying. One time in first grade, a teacher yelled at me and gave me detention because she saw someone with a similar coat walk up the wrong side of the stairs. Adults acting like they know kids better than the kids know themselves. That's some garbage. Also, I still fully support lowering the voting age. I remember dyeing my hair back to my natural color once I got my first job, and after having blonde for 4 years, my mom refused to believe my hair was naturally that dark. Thought I was a light brunette naturally. It's been years since I've dyed it in. Yep, still dark. Looks black in some lights. She also refuses to believe I'm 2 inches taller than the last time she went to a doctor's appointment with me. I think some parents get so used to taking mind to what they've learned about you that it's hard when you correct them or your tastes change. Like how I used to love apple juice. She keeps it stuck for me. I don't like apple juice anymore. I don't even like juice. I understood why it happened, but blaming the whole class or group of people because of one person or a few people's actions seriously pissed me off and still does. The term, "because I said so." 2 Tales from Kindergarten, Part 1. It was coloring time. We had each been handed a sheet with a large giraffe to color in with crayons. The teacher had an assistant this day, probably a teacher in training. I was neutral to her at this point. I carefully selected my crayons, yellow and brown, and began coloring in the giraffe like a civilized 4-year-old. As I worked away diligently, keeping each color within its borders, I looked around and saw my comrades haphazardly scribbling away with reckless abandon. Those didn't look like any giraffes I had ever seen pictures of. I was called away to help the kid write his name on his completed abomination. He hadn't quite worked out a capital R. When I returned to my work in progress, I found to my horror the assistant scribbling in the rest of my giraffe because drawing time was over and I wasn't finished. I was speechless. My rights had been violated. The injustice has stuck with me ever since. Part 2. Another day. It's craft time. I was excited. We were going to be making kites. We gathered into a line and began collecting our assigned materials. I reached the teacher's desk and received several feet of red yarn in an empty white grocery bag. I became suspicious. We were then instructed to tie one end of the red yarn to one of the handles of the plastic bag, and then go outside and fly. That's it. I took my new pet bag out into the schoolyard and looked around. My comrades were running around holding the end of their red yarn with bags flapping around behind. The Monsieur I decided to suck it up and give it a go. I began to run, bag in tow, lifting the tether as high as I could. It was pathetic. I felt ashamed. This is not a kite. I'm dragging around a plastic bag like an idiot and it's their fault. I didn't like kindergarten much. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.